Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. Our next door neighbor is with us today on Newsmaker Sunday. Phoenix PD is literally right next door to the Fox 10 studios in downtown Phoenix. Chief Daniel Garcia is our guest this week on Newsmaker Sunday. Thanks for being here. And you've been here now 2.5 years.
Correct.
And came here from Dallas. How many years in Dallas?
34 years with Dallas.
Wow. And we'll talk about that, the differences between the two departments. I want to start off today with something you and I chatted about at Phoenix headquarters earlier in the week. The death last weekend of Michelle Cuso, mentally ill woman. You had 4 officers who were going to help transport her. You told me that you guys do these mental health transports. They're court ordered.
Correct.
You guys do almost, what, 4,500 of these a year?
We do 4,500 based on calls for service from the medical physicians that are ordering these pickups. But in fact, we do an additional 4,000 that officers on view on daily patrols on themselves. So we do about 8,500 of these a year.
So you go in there on Saturday, 4 officers, and it ends up escalating into a situation where she's got a hammer and attacks one of your officers, and he ends up in shooting and killing her. Mm-hmm. And there was some outcry in the community about how can this happen? The mother calls for help. Her daughter ends up shot and killed. I want to give you an opportunity again to tell me a little bit about what you said that day, how this really broke your heart.
It really did. You know, I've had an opportunity to visit with Frances Garrett, the mother of Miss Cuso, and offered my condolences to her. And she's an incredible woman. Look, I was like everybody else. I saw her interviews on television, and it really touched my heart because she was speaking from the heart. I can't talk too much about the investigative issue. You know, but I will tell you this. You asked me a day or two ago in relation, could this happen, what we've seen in Ferguson, could it happen in Phoenix? And I want to tell you that it could. It could happen. The fact is, anytime that, that you're dealing with human emotions, and in law enforcement we're always dealing with human emotions, anger and compassion, and various other characteristics of human emotion. Yes, you never underestimate the human emotion. Yes, it could happen here. But there's things you got to do to prevent that. And I think that's the big difference of Phoenix versus Ferguson. Mm-hmm. We have a tremendous commitment by this law enforcement agency, the Phoenix Police Department, to reach out and be partners with our community.
And we'll talk a little bit more about Ferguson and how this relates, because this woman, African-American as well, you know, and then the mental illness. And you guys deal with this a lot in the streets. And I asked you that day, and this is Monday morning quarterbacking, but people at home would say, was there any other way to deal with her than lethal force? And people ask this all the time of police. Well, why not a taser? Why not a baton? She's a woman with a claw hammer. You've got 4 officers. What do you say to people when they come at you and ask you this?
You know, the options, again, I'm going to speak in a general case here. I'm not going to speak about the specifics of this case, but anytime we're facing volatile situations, you always have to review your options. But
and you've ordered that review.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing about us law enforcement that's always trying for us is that time is our biggest enemy. Sometimes things happen very fast, and our officers. I know that I speak for us in a general term here. Always try to prepare ourselves when we're going to a call by understanding what's going on and the dynamics of the call. But sometimes we'll drive up on things. The dynamics of law enforcement are always changing on you very rapidly. Yes, we have tools on our person to protect ourselves, but we also have to rely on the options that are part of our thinking and process through. And
in a situation like that, just dispel this for me, because I think there's this sense, well, you've got your taser, you've got your service revolver, sidearm. Grabbing the taser isn't always an option, is it?
No, it's not always. Again, depending on what the force that's coming at the officer, he's got to make some quick decisions.
And you've ordered a review of this case and a review of how you handle these transports of mentally ill patients.
Yes, I have.
Right.
On both cases. The Phoenix Police Department is doing an investigative process of what took place out there. But I've also reached out and confirmed and talked to Bill Montgomery, our county attorney, and he will do a second independent review of this issue.
So to say you're not comfortable with what happened out there, that's true. You don't like the outcome, obviously.
Well, anytime a human life is taken, it is cause for review and cause to look at how things happen. But again, one of the elements of what took place out there, and something that, quite frankly, earlier in the year I talked about the Phoenix Police Department doing a review of is the mental health issues. Because
you deal with it all the time. Let's roll tape number 2 in the big screen behind me. This is Ferguson. You said, yes, it could happen here if you don't do the right things. Right. What are the right things?
Well, first off, you have to establish relationships with your community before an incident like this happens. I can tell you that when an incident like this happens, we're already reaching out to the community immediately after an incident and making contact with their community. You all did a tremendous piece on our Assistant Director, Gerald Peace, and his job with the Phoenix Police Department. He is an Assistant Director to me, and his job is to work on working with the community, on liaisoning with the community on various issues. Community outreach task force, community action officers. The Phoenix Police Department, even prior to my arrival, has all of these elements always working to work with the community and create bonds with the community.
When you see these images behind us, is this bad policing, what happened here?
You know what, I don't want to criticize another agency, but again, just to stress that you have to have relationships with your community. Policing today is a shared responsibility. And look, I started policing in 1978, and back then it was a whole different atmosphere of policing. You've got to progress the technologies, you have to progress the direction of policing, and hopefully you're doing it with your community.
You got to have the community to buy into what you're doing, right? If they're not buying into it, you're done. You cannot do it.
Well, you're doing it on your own, and that's a much difficult climb.
Let's get to that piece, because I want to show it. This really speaks to the community outreach that your department has done, dating back to the 90s, really.
Correct, yes.
Long before you got here, but you've fostered this as well. And this is a piece Mia Garcia did, and we were asking the question, could Ferguson happen here? And what is Phoenix PD doing to avoid it from happening here? This is Mia's piece. This is tape number 6.
You'll see him at every protest, every rally in the city of Phoenix.
Whether it's PALs for animal rights, whether it's the Bosnians pro-life, pro-choice.
Gerald Richard is an assistant to Chief Daniel Garcia. He's a liaison between the community and Phoenix police. He listens to concerns and then reports back to the chief.
The community needs to feel as though there's someone that they can call. I'm not sworn. I'm a civilian, just like you.
His job is to make sure tensions in Phoenix never hit a boiling point like in Ferguson, Missouri.
I was 13 years old when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. And I remember how Chicago, the riots that occurred there. And when I came here, that was one of the things I swore. I pray to God that never happens here in Phoenix.
At which point, her mother...
Gerald helps people organize safe protests like today's outside of City Hall.
I would say that's a good thing if he's really out here getting our concerns and he is actually talking to the people, then he can bring proper information back to the correct people.
Along with Gerald, plainclothes detectives from the Community Response Squad stand back, listen, and help keep the peace too.
Individuals are able to express themselves and to be able to feel they can do that without the concern of having officers in tactical gears.
Gerald says it's crucial to build a foundation for dialogue instead of violence.
And it's one of the things that I sincerely hope for as far as Ferguson, that one day that they'll be able to reach that point as well. But it's going to take time.
Chief Daniel Garcia is our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. Before you got here, I did a piece 4 years ago. We did a piece called Cops in Color. I went into South Phoenix and rode around and just talked to people about how they feel about police. And I remember this story, and it's always stuck with me. One night, the officers pull in, and there's some kids having a water balloon fight out in the middle of the street. And they turn their headlights on, and they stop. And the kids scattered. They thought there was going to be trouble. And the cops were simply there to put light on these kids so that they could have their water balloon fight. But the initial reaction was, uh-oh.
Uh-oh, yeah, exactly.
How do you get over that hurdle?
You know, that's a great question. It's officer doing actions just like that. You know what, one of the things that I really like about our department, and again, one of the things that I inherit, coffee with a cop. This is an organized meeting that happens all over the city of Phoenix in various communities where you can sit down and actually have coffee with one of our officers And I try to attend as many of those as I can because it gives an opportunity for our citizens to know that we're just like you. You know, we've got favorite football teams. We've got favorite things.
But that uniform is a powerful thing.
It is a powerful thing. And look, children gravitate to it at a young age. What organization would want to push them away from that?
Right.
We've got to embrace the fact that we've got to have a relationship with our community. It's so important.
Is it a better time to be a cop in 2014 than it was when you started in 1978?
Yes.
Is it safer or more
Yes.
dangerous?
No, I think it's safer. I really do. The thing about it, I think what helped us is that law enforcement finally realized that we couldn't solve and fight crime by ourselves. Crime is a shared responsibility of attacking it. And the other piece of it is that the technology has increased so much for us that the intelligence that allows us to target the criminal behavior out there has become much better.
Does the police force, and this has been the big question in Ferguson, you've got a town that's, 70-some% African American, maybe a little bit more than that, but the police force is 90% white. Can a white police force police a diverse community? Do you have to have diversity in your department?
I think your department needs to reflect the community that you represent.
Could we talk about your numbers? You're going to have to grab your iPhone.
Yes,
but I want to get a sense of where we are on this, and maybe you can put it in perspective in terms of when you talk about the numbers, whether that is reflective of our demographic makeup.
And John, I don't think it's about the numbers. It's about, again, the diversity of our organization, but I will share both with you. The demographics of the Phoenix Police Department: white officers, 2,179. African American, 108. Hispanic, 425. American Indian, Alaskan, 13. American Indian, Alaskan Black, white. American Indian, Alaskan white, 5. Asian, 55. Asian white, 33, excuse me. Other races not Hispanic, 16. Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, 7. Other Hispanic, 24. That's a diverse organization. That's a diverse organization.
If you had a group, given our makeup, I mean, we're a third Hispanic, Latino, is that the area you'd probably try to add more officers if you could? You've got 400 some odd, you said.
Yes, not necessarily. No. I think I want communities to accept this uniform,
regardless of who's wearing it.
Regardless of who's wearing it. I think that should be the goal of law enforcement, not to give you something so much that, oh, there I am too. But I think that's important too. I think both issues need to be addressed. Diversity is important. The department needs to reflect the community. But when you call, you got to have the trust that the guy that gets there, or the man or woman who gets there, has the passion and the compassion of doing police work.
Danny Garcia, Chief Danny Garcia, our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. When we come back, he's made a commitment to get more cameras on officers. Good or bad thing? Is it good for the officers? How do they feel about it? And also, what is the biggest problem when it comes to crime facing Phoenix right now? Back in a minute on Newsmaker Sunday. Back on Newsmaker Sunday with Phoenix Police Chief Danny Garcia, on the job now for 2.5 years. Biggest difference between here and Dallas, where you came from?
You know, as far as policing?
Policing and just your sense of this place.
Well, first off, I got to tell you, from a police department standpoint and the city of Phoenix standpoint, I love the city of Phoenix. I have absolutely fallen in love with this city.
I have heard this so many times from athletes, politicians,
yes,
whoever it may be. Once they're here, they really like it.
I'll tell you something, and I may have said this before to you earlier, but the biggest difference of Phoenix versus Dallas is everything pretty down there, man made it. Here in Phoenix, God made it. And it's beautiful. I love the mountains. I love the scenery around us. We're blessed to live in this area.
Okay, we talked about in the first segment, if you're just joining us, about the death of Michelle Cuso. And you guys were transporting her a week ago, and she ended up trying to attack an officer and was shot and killed. In the wake of that, you've said we need more cameras on officers. How many is realistic with the budgetary considerations? And how do the officers feel about wearing them?
Let me tell you what my goal is. My goal is to have every first responder wearing them. That's about 1,200 officers.
Now, I've heard that these have made crime go down. Why would that be?
Look, I think it's an automatic behavior that when people are on camera, they behave better.
Okay, so you're telling me then when you make a stop, Do you say to the person, and by the way, ma'am, I am wearing a camera right now?
We do. We do.
So on a traffic stop...
And sometimes we don't. The fact is that when somebody sees a camera on you,
oh, they'll see it.
And it has a green light on, they know.
Okay.
They know.
So it's you don't even need to say it. It's
very obvious.
They will see it.
It's very obvious.
What do the officers think about it? Because, I mean, we've all had, hey, this newsroom, private conversations that you would not want out there.
You know, I think with today's generation that everything's about technology, our officers are going to embrace it. And I can tell you this, the way we started our camera program in the Phoenix Police Department, we asked for volunteers, and we got them.
You've got 50 now.
We
you
got
want
50
100.
now. We're gonna get 100, and it's my goal to continue to increase that process.
Just a guess. I suspect that Eric Holder in the Justice Department will start to, in the wake of Ferguson, regardless of the outcome of that.
Right.
They may ask police departments around the country, they may demand that they do this.
I hope they do.
But is there may be, and I'm wondering why federal money couldn't be spent on this already with RICO money,
right,
that you're taking crime assets and using them for law enforcement things.
You know, the cops department of the Justice Department does a good job of keeping kind of their hand on the pulse of what's happening across our communities across the United States. Last year, a year ago, was SRO, school resource officers, based on all the shootings we had at the schools. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see Ron Davis, the director of cops, start focusing on technologies, cameras.
Okay, one more thing about Ferguson. There's been a lot of discussion about the militarization of police. You guys do get assets from the military.
Correct.
Tell me about the balancing that you go through on whether to deploy that or not. Or, I mean, you want the officers to have all the tools they need, but does there come a point where you say, that's going to make the public really uncomfortable, it may backfire?
Yeah, I think you always have to be careful when in relation to resources, equipment being brought in. I want my officers to have all the resources they need. I want my officers to have all the resources they need to get the job done and for their safety. But we do have to be concerned of the militarization of law enforcement. I think when you cross that line, you're also crossing the line of the community feeling comfortable to come up and engage with you.
But let's take Ferguson for a minute. Now, somebody says, well, they're in riot gear. All these kids are doing are throwing rocks and bottles. If you're out there policing and you don't wear your headgear and you don't wear your SWAT gear when somebody's throwing rocks at you, people get hurt, right?
That's correct. And probably what you're seeing here is officers, they're facing force, and they have to protect themselves.
Okay, 2 minutes left in this segment. What is the biggest issue crime-wise facing the city of Phoenix right now?
It's actually property crime, which is a good thing, a good problem to have. It's not violent crime. Right now, our violent crime is about 8.3% down. Our property crime is 7.9% down. Overall crime in Phoenix is down 8%. But property crime is as a police chief, when you see that the majority of your crime is property, that's a good thing.
So for somebody out there who is not dabbling in the criminal world, just a run-of-the-mill person who goes to work every day, comes home, has a family, they're going to be touched more likely by property crime than anything else.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
So that's something you want to get a handle on.
Well, the thing about it is this, property crime and property can be replaced. Violent crime, human lives, injuries, hard to replace.
Okay, when we come back, for the first time in 5 years, you are hiring officers again. It just happened on Friday as a bunch of people streamed in to the department downtown to apply. And we're going to talk about that when we come back.
Sounds good.
All right?
Yes.
With Danny Garcia, Phoenix Police Chief, back in a moment on Newsmaker Sunday. On the job now here in Phoenix for 2.5 years now. Chief Danny Garcia is our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. Talked about before the break, on Friday you had a stream of people rolling into downtown, into your headquarters, looking for a job. And
John, let me correct you. Nobody does face-to-face hirings anymore. It was online.
Oh, it was online. Nobody.
It's online.
I thought. Okay, so when you told me you went down to administration and personnel,
I did that because I wanted to touch the people that are doing the work.
Okay, you're talking about the people in your office. I thought you were actually seeing applicants.
No,
okay, applicants are coming in.
Yeah,
they're seeing it come in online, and they're
applying online.
And the people in the office are saying, "This is awesome.
This is great."
Okay.
What happens is that at 12 a.m. last Friday, we opened.
Thank you for bringing me into the 21st century, by the way.
we opened the lines of applying for the Phoenix Police Department and actually applying for the first test date, which is September 26th. 600 people applied within 12 hours.
Do you have any idea the ethnic makeup of that group?
No, I do not. But we're excited that September 26th, the diversity issue in hiring is going to be important for our organization. Again, we talked about our department reflecting our community. But the fact is we're going to treat everybody fairly. I think what's important here is that people are excited and are been waiting for the Phoenix Police Department to start hiring.
How many will you hire?
We're going to hire 300 officers, 100 in the next 3 years consecutively.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of officers.
Now, you were telling me that you were losing, let's see, 70 a year?
We lose about 70 officers to attrition a year. So what I'm excited about is that we're stopping the bleeding. Okay.
So with 100, you're gaining 30 each year.
Exactly. The fact is, look, I'm really confident that at some point we as a city need to not only reallocate the 500 officers we lost, but we do need to increase our staffing to reflect the size of this community.
You came in, one of the first things you did early on, you said, we're gonna make our officers look like officers. We're gonna make sure that they dress up and look like a police officer. You thought there were too many, to use a college football term, too many uniforms out there, right?
I did.
Okay. That got you off maybe on the wrong foot with the union a little bit. How's that relationship with the union going? Because there was some real tension there for a while.
You know what?
Is it improved?
It has improved. You know, we meet on a monthly basis and we meet on a quarterly basis to discuss various issues of the department. I try to keep them informed as much as possible, but there is a line. There are decisions that I have to make with my executive staff. There are decisions that I bring him in and always try to get input from, and there are decisions that fall on the chief of police that I have to make.
Even if they don't like it?
I'm the chief of police.
How's it going at City Hall?
It's going great. I love working with the mayor and council. They've been very supportive to the Phoenix Police Department and the men and women who do the job.
Do you feel that, I mean, we're in a budgetary crisis right now still. I mean, yes. we're coming out of it and we dip back into it. And in fact, if you can roll tape number 5, we're going to see some parking meters up here because Phoenix is going to start charging for parking, and probably at the city parks or at the trailheads. And we're seeing a lot of this downtown.
Right.
This is budgetary stuff dealing with pensions and benefits and all of that. How do you feel about what your funding level is right now? About getting what you need?
Again, my job coming here in 2012, the biggest challenge I saw was getting our officers really from point A to point B. Point A being where we're at in staffing today and where we're going to be by the time we start hiring again, which thankfully we're there now.
That was the biggest issue, is you needed to hire some officers.
Yes, we needed to hire officers, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to hire officers, so my goal was the officer safety was priority 1 for me. Priority 2 was crime reduction, and priority 3 was what I call the mastery of policing. I wanted us as a department to understand how we all police the same.
We talked a little bit about this, and I want to touch on it. Every loss of life for an officer is a terrible thing, but we have lost how many in the city of Phoenix since the 1800s?
Since 1881, we've lost 37 officers in the line of duty.
That is far fewer than I would have thought, because every time we lose an officer, it makes such a huge emotional imprint on us.
The city of Phoenix has a great compassion for the men and women of law enforcement. And I thank God that that's exactly where we're at today. Again, that's the trust and the partnership that we have with our community. But one officer is one officer too much.
You're how old now?
I am 58.
How long do you think you'd go in this job?
You know what? Look, I feel great. I'm blessed to be in a great organization. I love the Phoenix Police Department. I love the city. I'm not sure what that equates to in numbers, John, but I'm happy to be here.
Danny Garcia, good to have you as a neighbor.
My pleasure.
We appreciate it. Good to see you again on Newsmaker Sunday, and we'll have you back. Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday, and we'll see you again next week.